Hey everybody, it is time for what I believe is my third installment of my series on the Bible and homosexuality. It's been so long since I've done one. I'm not entirely sure that's the correct number, but I think it's the third one. I want to start this one with kind of a tangential story, but I feel like it might resonate with some people. So I have this friend. We're not like really close friends or anything, but I've known her for a few years, and we talk occasionally from time to time, and we get along pretty well. We've never had any real disagreements or fights or conflict or anything like that. And this particular friend is an absolute Snapchat fiend, like posts to her story all the time. Whenever I post something to my story, which is not that often, she's almost always one of the first 4 or 5 people to see it. The impression I get is this woman is just on Snapchat all the time. And so one day I noticed that it occurred to me that she hadn't posted anything to her story in like a couple weeks, and that was really unusual for her. And I thought, okay, I don't think she just up and died and got off Snapchat. Like, I'm pretty sure what's going on here is she's blocked me from seeing her story for whatever reason. Now, I don't think it's because she's mad at me, angry with me. Like I said, we've never had any conflict. She still looks at my story. We still talk from time to time. Everything seems to be fine. I don't think she's angry with me or anything. But it's my understanding from some mutual friends that we have that have told me various things about her and who know her well, probably better than I do. It's my understanding that she identifies as lesbian, and my suspicion is that she knows how I feel about the issue. She knows I take a conservative position on the issue. And what I'm guessing is she's probably gotten into a relationship with another woman, and she wants to be able to post it on Snapchat and doesn't want me to see it because she's afraid of what I might think of her if I see it. And it's kind of, I mean, I could be wrong. It could be something completely different. But the facts that I have right now lead me to believe that that's probably what's going on. And it's kind of sad to me because, first of all, I look at it and I think, okay, there's a sort of a comical aspect to it because I'm like, okay, you've blocked me from your Snapchat story because you don't want me to figure out this thing that I'm pretty sure I've already figured out anyway. And the sad part is you're afraid that I'm going to like dislike you or judge you for it when no, I wouldn't do that. I mean, all that tells me is that you sin. Great, we all do. If I was going to hate or dislike every human being I know who ever lives in any kind of sin, then I would have to hate literally everyone I know, including myself. And as a Christian, I have a responsibility to love people whether they sin or not. And also, like I said, it's just common sense. Like I would never, belittle someone or cut them out of my life for sinning because that applies to literally every human being I know. I would have no friends. I couldn't even look myself in the mirror. So in any case, that's, like I said, kind of a tangential story, but it is related to the topic at hand. And I, for whatever reason, felt like it might resonate with some people. Okay, so on to the topic at hand, which is continuing to move through the Bible, looking at references to homosexuality and what the Bible says about it. We've talked about Sodom. We've talked about the prohibitions against homosexual behavior in Leviticus and why the evidence suggests that those prohibitions are meant for all people at all times, not just the Jews at that specific time. And that's going to become important again in what we talk about today. The next mention of homosexuality in the Bible after Leviticus is in the book of Judges. And we're actually not going to go into this one in great detail because there isn't really anything new to learn from it that we haven't already discussed. Basically, the story is very similar to the story of Sodom. The details are very different, but the basic outline of it is kind of the same. A guy is traveling. He goes to a foreign town. He stays with someone there. Some gay guys from the town come to the door demanding to be able to do sexual things with him. So similar to Sodom. And then at that point, the story changes. The way it goes after that is pretty different from how it went in Sodom. Again, like Sodom, there isn't any real clear condemnation of the homosexual behavior itself in that passage. The Israelites decide to fight against this town and wipe them out because they were bad. And God is initially on board with it, but then it starts getting a little ambiguous to where it's not clear that God actually supports all the actions the Israelites took against that town. But in any case, there isn't really anything new to gain from that story. So we're going to move on, which means we're going to make a pretty big jump, because for the rest of the Old Testament, that's in the book of Judges, which is the 7th book of the Old Testament. For the rest of the Old Testament, from Ruth through Malachi, the topic doesn't come up again. And it doesn't come up again until the 6th book of the New Testament, which is Romans. So you've got the 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. That's where the bulk of the story of Jesus' life on earth is in the Bible. Then you have Acts, which talks about what the church did after Jesus went to heaven. No mention of homosexuality in any of those 5 books. Then Paul talks about it in some detail in Romans, and we'll get to that in the next video. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, this gives an opportunity to talk about a very, very common myth that you'll hear even people in the church who should know better say, which is that Jesus never condemned homosexual behavior. Now, on the surface, that seems reasonable because, like I said, homosexuality is not mentioned in the Gospels. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, it is not mentioned by Jesus or anyone else. It's not in there at all. So superficially, you would look at that and you would say, well, yeah, clearly Jesus didn't mention it. And just for the sake of thoroughness, there are quotations from Jesus in other places throughout the New Testament, especially in the book of Revelation, and he doesn't mention it in any of those quotes either. However, saying that Jesus never condemned homosexual behavior is a myth. And if you want to see why, it's one of those things that you may not notice on just a casual reading of the Bible, but it's kind of one of those things where, like, once you see it, you can't unsee it because it actually is pretty obvious. And in order to explain it, we need to go back to the book of Exodus in the Old Testament. Exodus chapter 3, this is the story of Moses and the burning bush. And in that story, God appears in a burning bush, tells Moses a variety of things, most prominently that Moses needs to go back to Egypt. He was not in Egypt at the time. He needs to go back to Egypt and lead the Israelite people out of Egypt. And Moses does a lot of protesting. One of the things that he says is, "Who should I tell the Israelites sent me? What is your name?" Talking to God. And probably some of the reason he said that was because Moses was an Israelite by birth and had interacted with the Israelites. He was familiar with the Israelite religion, but he was raised by Egyptians. He was raised as an Egyptian, so he was presumably familiar with the Egyptian religion as well. And at the time that he saw the burning bush, he was working for a Midianite priest, and the Midianite religion was probably pretty different from either the Egyptian or the Israelite religions. So Moses had been exposed to 3 completely different religious systems, and so he probably just wanted to know, okay, like, which of all these gods I know are you? And so in response to that, God says, he actually says quite a bit, but the most relevant thing to us that he says is in Exodus 3, verse 14, God said to Moses, "I am who I am. This is what you're to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you." Okay, so God refers to himself as I am, and I believe the point of that is sort of to make the point that God just always is. He exists outside of time. There's no past or future with him. He just is all the time. I am. Okay, great. What does this have to do with Jesus and homosexuality? If you go to the book of John, that's one of the 4 Gospels that talk about Jesus. In John 8, there is this long conversation that Jesus has with the Pharisees. And just to verify what I'm saying, in verse 13, it says, the Pharisees challenged him. And that's sort of the start of the conversation, and it goes on for the rest of the chapter. In verse 57, we see this. This is the Pharisees talking. You are not yet 50 years old, they said to him, and you've seen Abraham? Because Jesus had said something about Abraham. Very truly, I tell you, Jesus answered, before Abraham was born, I am. Now, what's Jesus doing there? He's identifying himself as the I am. And the Pharisees would have known this because they were Old Testament scholars. They knew everything about their Bible, which was what we call the Old Testament. They knew what I am was a reference to. And we can see that in the next verse, because the next verse says, at this, they picked up stones to stone him, because they knew he was claiming not only to be a God, but to be the God who wrote all the books of their Bible. And hopefully by now you can see where I'm going with this. All the commands and prohibitions that the God of the Old Testament made, including the prohibitions against homosexual behavior, Jesus is taking responsibility for that. He is saying that God who gave you that law, that was me. So even though it's not immediately obvious from a casual reading of the Gospels, Jesus very much did, in fact, take responsibility for all the laws of the Old Testament, including those prohibitions against homosexual behavior that we talked about in Leviticus. The prohibitions that we talked about seem to have been given, meant to be for all people at all times, not just ceremonial laws for the Israelites at that time. All right, so that will wrap up this video, and who knows, maybe I'll get the next one out, sooner than 5 or 6 weeks from now. But I will see you then.